Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a place that you have missed for, what, almost a year now. Little Round Top, that's where we are, and with me today is Steve Sims, Superintendent of Gettysburg National Military Park, and Dave Malgi, local hero. I would like to call you, Dave.
Well, why would you do that?
Well, because you sponsored this for us. So you're sponsoring this for us. You've got an awesome collection. If you want to talk about collecting, you've got to become a patron of ours, because we have an interview coming out in a few months with Dave about how he got into collecting and what an amazing collection he has. But we don't have the whole collection with us, but in this bag he has some of his choice artifacts from Little Round Top that he's going to show us periodically throughout. But today we're going to focus on the changes that have occurred and maybe where it's going to lead on the rehabilitation project of Little Round Top. Steve Sims is going to show us through that. Steve, thanks for doing this.
Yeah,
thanks for inviting us to do this. That was really cool of you. We've all been wondering what is happening to our precious Little Round Top. What is going to happen to her? We love her so much, and this is going to, I think, dispel a lot of worries that a lot of people have.
Sure. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you all for tuning in this morning. Let me talk to you about Little Round Top and what we're doing up here. I think first and foremost, we're preserving and protecting Little Round Top. That's the core mission of the National Park Service, and that's what we're doing up here. Preserving the landscape, trying to restore some of that landscape that might have been denuded from visitation, over decades of visitation. We're also increasing safety up here at Little Round Top, because those of you that are very familiar with it and have visited before, especially on a bus tour, you know that when the buses pull up, you're offloading into traffic. And so we're creating safety up here. And as we walk the site this morning, I'll point those features out. And then thirdly, we're increasing accessibility. Access to Little Round Top for those that might have mobility challenges, especially because it's a hilltop. It's of course got slopes, and when you have those slopes, it's hard for folks, especially wheelchair-bound folks, to access this resource and to understand it like everyone else who does have access. So we're increasing accessibility by providing accessible trails to key viewpoints and spots here at Little Round Top. So it's an exciting project. We did close not a year ago, but last July 26th, we closed, and we do anticipate reopening in summer of 24. So it's my pleasure to have you here with us this morning, so we can walk the site, we can show you what we've done so far, and try to describe what to expect moving forward. So how does that sound?
That sounds great. So as we go forward, Mark, who is from Community Media, they're filming this. Mark, why don't you go ahead of us up this trail? That way, if you trip and fall, we'll be behind you and we can catch you, okay? And then when we get up to the top, we'll get in front of the camera here.
But before you do, if you can pan over to Chamberlain Avenue, what I want to explain what we've done here already and kind of give the visitors an understanding of some of the concrete that we're putting in here. So first of all, Chamberlain Avenue, prior to this project, was, I believe, a 15-foot wide asphalt path, more like a road width. And so we've actually narrowed the width of this pathway to 8 feet, and we put exposed aggregate concrete in. And so this concrete is an accessible path, meets accessibility standards, and is going to be more durable than the asphalt as well. So we're able to preserve the Telford base that was underneath it, some of the original roads that were constructed by the War Department, and build this on top. So this concrete is what we'll see on Little Round Top when we finish, but our approach, our philosophy is trying to take the lightest approach possible to improvements here at Little Round Top. We really want the natural landscape, the battle landscape, the commemorative landscape to show through.
Yeah, so when this was in its heyday, this would have been a road that you'd be seeing people with their horse and buggies going on and stuff like that, right? Like this was actually a park road where you would take a vehicle to go and see the 20th Main's position. Yep. Now we just use it as a footpath.
Now it's just a path.
It's just a footpath. And speaking of footpaths, Mark, why don't you get on up ahead of us here? All right, and we'll be behind you. And as we go, so what is the plan for this path here? Because it used to be very rough. And
so this used to be an asphalt path. Mm-hmm. And as you're walking down the asphalt path, there would be some granite steps as well. What's going to go in its place is a stabilized aggregate. So it's a gravel base. We put a soil stabilizer in it, and it's more natural material. Okay. It's also a native material to the area that we're using. And then instead of granite steps, we're going to put water bars So stone that's going to kind of cut across the pathway to direct water off the pathway so it doesn't wash out.
Okay.
And I think by removing all that asphalt and putting more of an aggregate base here, it's a little bit lighter touch.
Right, okay.
It's a little bit more natural. And
Hang on there,
so when
Mark.
we finish this project, the only asphalt you'll see are the main roadways.
The main roadways, okay, good. And if you want to get a shot of the monument over there, Marky, a lot of people don't, it's been so long since we've seen this, I forgot that the monument was made of wood.
Yes, so thank you for pointing that out, Matt.
But let's talk about that. What is that for?
So all of the contractor that we hired to do this project, one of the very first things they did is put in protection for all of our monuments.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we walk the site, you'll see that every monument and marker is covered. It's covered with wood, so that the contractor, one, recognizes that it's there. And
Good point.
as they're working close to these spaces, it's a reminder that they need to be careful, that these are precious.
Yeah.
Can't bump into them.
Right.
And so it just prevents a lot of accidental bumps and bruises, if you will. There is no work that's being done on any of these monuments.
Right, so it's just to protect them from damage.
Yeah. And then you also see some orange fence. Orange fence is to protect trees. Some of these trees are witness trees, or at least we think they're witness trees. And so we want to protect trees, protect their root system as much as possible, because they're a critical component of the landscape.
So are we saying then that the park believes this tree here is a witness tree?
No. Oh. Maybe. But it's, we also want to make sure the contractor isn't traveling over the roots of the trees that are there.
Gotcha, okay.
And we want to protect that landscape.
Now, one thing I notice here is very obvious as I look at the stone wall is how nice it looks as compared to what I remember. What's
Which is
going
behind
on?
us, by the way.
Yeah, this is what I remember here, which if you want to get a shot there, Mark, is just a pile of rocks that looked like it wanted to be a wall. And then over here, we see an actual stone wall. What's up with that?
What's up with that? So, what we wanted to do is all of the historical alignments of the breastworks, these stone walls, we wanted to rehabilitate them and reconstruct them. And our philosophy on reconstructing these walls, first and foremost, is sustainability. We want to make sure that when we rebuild these, that they'll last. So if they look like this, where the walls have basically eroded over time, my assumption is the visitor's going to be more apt to walk over it, walk on it, or not even notice that it's even there.
Right.
So by making it a little bit more prominent, a little bit more purposeful, I think the visitor's going to respect it and hopefully stay on trail. Two, they know there's a wall there. It's a great interpretive element for licensed battlefield guides or rangers to say, hey, this is a wall that was here during the battle. May not have looked exactly like this, but then you can have that conversation about interpreting that wall, interpreting what it means to the fight here that happened.
I like there's kind of like psychology in this. Like it's a subtle thing. Like it's not saying stay off the walls, but that people would just see a nice wall and go, oh, I'm not going to climb on that.
Let's hope not, because this is your park, right?
Yeah. Well,
this
is
your
else's too, but thank you.
And this is your money that's going into rehabilitating this, and we want it to be sustainable. We want it to last. Yeah. And we really hope that by the way we're rebuilding these, one, it provides that interpretive element, that interpretive experience, but also it's respected.
So Steve, when you rebuild this wall, will you have to bring other stones in to add to this, or will you pick stones that are laying randomly on the ground and incorporate those in the wall?
Yeah, great question. So within about 10 to 20 feet of each of these walls is the stone that was originally there. So the majority of these rebuilds is the original stone that's around that wall. That's the first source of stone that we're using to rebuild these walls. And if we don't have enough, then we'll bring some in. We have a stone supply that we've reviewed and approved as being a close match to the original stone here.
Nice.
Thank you.
All right, so there's more stuff up here. So let's go on ahead there.
All right, do we let Mark go
you
first?
Want to go, Mark?
All
go
right.
ahead. I'll walk behind you. Mark is a real trooper, ladies and gentlemen. He's been out here twice now with us, walking around. And I'm kind of crazy to deal with, and he just goes, okay. So that's always nice. All right, let's pause here for a second. So we're going to be focusing back here. So tell me about what the plan is for this area here, behind the 20th Main's position.
So the current plan is just to revegetate.
Oh, okay.
Pretty simple. But, you know, if you look at that little soil pile over here to
the left.
Mark's left, one thing that the original design, I'll call it, called for a plaza or a gathering area right there. Granite steps going down to this accessible plaza. It had pathways coming through here. And as the contractor laid out these sidewalks and plazas, my team, and we're out here every week, we looked at it and said, you know, this is just a little too much. It's a little too heavy of a touch to try to provide access, to try to provide a trail. And we decided to eliminate it because there's sufficient trail width, there's sufficient signage, there's sufficient space for people to gather up here on Chamberlain Avenue that we didn't need that extra concrete. So we actually deleted that. So, and that is a common story throughout this entire project.
Yes.
Is that as we are walking the site, as the contractor is moving through the site and laying things out, we are double checking the decisions that were made during the design process. Because the design process, you're looking at everything in 2D on a map, on a drawing. And it's really hard to visualize, especially for those that don't read drawings a lot. It's hard to visualize what does that mean in the landscape? Because the landscape is critically important to preserve and protect. Sure. And so, you know, I've got my archaeologist out here, my cultural resource program manager out here, I've got my interpretive chief out here, I've got my communications folks out here every week, my facilities folks, every week we're walking the site and we're double and triple checking all the decisions that are being made out here because we can't do it wrong. We don't have that opportunity to do it again. This is it. So we want to make sure that it's right. So if we need to delete things, if we need to adjust things, we're going to do it. We're just gonna do it.
So Steve, there might be a problematic issue here if you revegetate here, and that is the rock that's over here. Maybe Mark can just take a look at that big rock right there. That's the rock where Colonel Oates' brother, mortally wounded, was laid against. A lot of people want to visit that.
Yeah.
Will there be access to that? Or will they have to go through the vegetation, which...
Yeah, and so when I say vegetation, it's probably going to be native warm season grasses.
Okay.
And if it's that popular, I'm sure we'll see a social trail to it, and maybe sometime down the road we'll formalize that social trail. And I think that might be the right approach for where we don't have enough evidence to formalize a trail, because as you may recall from before this project, I mean, this whole area was just denuded of any vegetation at all. So you couldn't discern if there was any trail at all. So we're going to revegetate it and still provide access to the markers and the monuments. People can still walk over there, but we're not going to put a trail all the way up to them from here.
If you had done the concrete plaza, wouldn't you have to put drainage in too? Because doesn't that throw off things when you put concrete on?
Well, it all sheet flow off and into the landscape.
Okay, so it would be kind of at a angle to go into the dirt.
Yep, go into the vegetation. But when we looked at that, and actually the contractor did install that plaza, when we looked at it, we said, oh no.
Oh, really?
And so we had them remove it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I thought it looked a little different here. All right.
Move on.
Yes, Mike.
Question here from chat.
Question from the chat. Okay, what does it say?
Okay, has there been any improvement to, or are there any plans for access to the Company B wall of the 20th Main?
Oh,
that
great
is outside
question.
the scope of the project, actually. It's a great question, but it's outside the scope of this project, so we're not doing anything different over there.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Right, okay, so it's just basically within the fence line that we came through, which excludes that area.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's move on up ahead here more. And here's a good shot, Mark, if you want to just get of the wall, closer shot of the wall with the sun beaming on it. So people can see just how nice a job they did. You'll notice the right flank marker there in wood. That's not a garbage can holder. That is the right flank protector. And now I got to protect Mark from falling.
Sentinels in wood.
Sentinels in wood. Wood sentinels. All right, so now we're back up on Chamberlain Avenue.
Back up on Chamberlain.
So we started at the end of this.
We did. And so there's actually a couple interpretive signage that we'll put here at the edge of the sidewalk. Some of the cantilever waysides will be placed right here. And, you know, I believe that this is a pretty wide sidewalk
Yeah,
right here. I
yeah.
mean, it's narrower than it was, but still pretty wide. But it's large enough for a group to gather,
Sure.
understand what's going on, and then decide where they want to go from there.
And is there going to be any path going down this way along the wall?
Yep. So we're going to make that it's going to be that natural stone material. We're calling it stabilized aggregate, and a little bit later we'll actually see a sample of that.
Yeah.
But we're going to put a stabilized aggregate trail all the way down to Wright Avenue.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
Where do you want to show us next?
Let's keep walking up.
gonna
Hey,
go
folks,
this way,
guys,
yeah.
before we go, why don't I show
Oh
a couple of
my
20th
God! How
20th
could I
Main
forget?
artifacts. You had a question earlier about the company B marker. I forget exactly what you said about my relics I'm bringing out today, Matt. They had to fit in this bag, so these are perhaps not the most exciting relics, but for for 20th Main fans, it probably will be. What I have here is a New York Depot canteen that was found in an estate sale up in Fairfield, Maine, and it's been painted, which was very normal for post-war veterans to do. They'd either embroider on the cloth or they would oftentimes paint. This actually says Company B, 20th Maine, or 20th Maine, and then it's got the 5th Corps insignia, the first division of the 5th Corps in red. And then on the bag, on the flip side, is the kind of the national shield. So at least one artifact that may have been here on July 2nd, 1863, that classic defense of the 20th Maine. And then the next thing I have is a VMM cartridge box plate. VMM was volunteer Maine militia. By 1863, it's likely that most of the troops had just standard U.S. plates, but there were a few VMMs left. This was found on Little Round Top immediately after the battle. As a matter of fact, you can't see it on camera, but if you look at it with a loupe or something that magnifies, you will see on the back, it was picked up on the battlefield July 7th of 1863. Now it has been cleaned, which I don't like, and there were actually two main units in this. There was one across the Valley of Death, the 4th Maine, and then the 20th Maine.
Is that the 7 there?
It does look like it, yeah.
So I don't know if the camera could pick this up, but right of my fingernail there is a 7. I can't make out anything else. Maybe there's
And a little bit later, I'll be showing you a belt plate from the 140th New York, and you'll see a different patina altogether. You also might note that it's because it's a box plate. It's very thin. It only has the lead on the ends. That was a kind of a cost-saving deal. But anyway, 20th Maine, likely belt plate. Found here on Little Round Top, July 7th, 1863.
That's awesome.
Okay.
All right, cool. So that's the 20th Maine stuff there.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's move then to where do you want to go?
We're going to cross Sykes Avenue, and then we're going to take a left towards the 83rd.
All right, we're going to go towards the 83rd Pennsylvania. Come on up ahead there, Mark. Everybody can get an unobstructed view.
You can see the contractors on the right-hand side of the sidewalk has done a little bit of topsoil to reseed the transition from the sidewalk to the existing grade. They haven't finished the sidewalk all the way to Sykes Avenue just yet.
Bob Wanilowitz says, will we be able to go off the trail at all, possibly along the Devil's Den side? This question goes for the rest of the park also.
Yeah.
I guess.
So, you know, generally speaking, we would prefer that everyone stays on trail. And the reason for staying on trail is to preserve the resources that are here. And if you recall, Little Round Top, before this project started, there's a lot of denuded landscape where the soil profile had been eroded over time because nobody stayed on trail. And so staying on trail is a preservation and resource protection measure. So we like to purposefully tell you where we'd like you to go,
Right.
which will provide you the experience, the views that we think you need to have and have access to.
Over here, Mark.
So by traveling off trail, you know, we end up having to, especially if a lot of people start following those trails, you know, it just erodes the resources.
Sure.
And
So you're not
we'll have to
saying
fix
they're not
later.
allowed, you're just saying we prefer you not, or you request that you don't.
We request that you don't.
Okay.
Request that you don't. And depending on where you're at in the battlefield, There could be other reasons. It could be a safety-related issue. It could be that there's an agricultural lease and our farmers are farming that space. So staying on the trail is, I think, just the appropriate and responsible thing to do, in my opinion.
Speaking of trails, one of our patrons sent in a question earlier, Brian Helton, and he said, is there a plan for a comprehensive system of trails throughout the park for hikers?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an excellent question. You know, as I drive around the battlefield, I see a lot of people walking on the roadways.
Yep.
Riding their bicycle on the roadways, segways on the roadways. There's so many people that are on the park avenues because that's how you get around the battlefield. We do have a horse trail and some other minor trails, I'll call them, in the park, but there's no circulation system. And I think it was like 2015, 2016, the park did go through a trail planning effort, and then that was paused. And what I want to do within the next couple of years is pull that back out and restart that trail planning process, because I'd like to explore ways to create a better circulation system. The avenues are very crowded, especially in the summer and heavy visitation periods. And if there's a way to use a trail system to disperse that load, if you will, of visitorship, then I think we should explore that. It has to be balanced, though, with preserving and protecting the landscape. We can't just trailblaze everywhere and create trails, because these landscapes are precious. And a trail through here could take out a boulder or a feature that is a critical component of what impacted and influenced the result of this battle.
In fact, when we went and did the walkthrough last week, you showed us a point where there was going to be a trail, but you said because they'd have to cut through boulders and stuff, everybody decided it wouldn't be a good idea.
Not a good idea. It would change the characteristic of that landscape. And actually, where we're standing is another great example. So if Mark, if you can pan to the left in this little boulder field that you see right in front of you, there's going to be a trail system built through here that was going to be accessible. But that required us to put about 5 feet of fill in this space, which would cover a lot of these boulders, cover this landscape, and it'd really change the slopes, the character.
Would you have to raise the road too?
The road would be raised too. And when the contractor laid that out and staked it out, and we looked at it and we said, oh no, this would not be good. This would not be good. So we deleted that, and which deleted that accessible pathway through here, but we found another way to make or create access or ADA compliant access from the hilltop down to the 20th Main without doing this. So
that's a good thing you said that. You're not deleting access, you just are deleting this idea for it and doing it somewhere else.
Or just deleting it.
Okay, either way. But there is access, is what I'm saying.
There's still access.
Yes, okay.
Yes,
all right,
absolutely.
So, speaking of trails, this is interesting. You showed us last time. So these are samples of the different type of, what would you call it, substance or surface?
So the terminology we're using for this trail surface is called stabilized aggregate.
Okay.
So it's an aggregate that's been stabilized. So we have actually 3 samples here. The first one that we see at the top is a material out of Wisconsin. It's got a wax polymer that they put in it. It's been used, I believe, like Monticello and other places as a trail surface. Golf courses use this. It repels water quite well. So it's been down a few weeks. These 3 samples have been down a few weeks, but that's one material we were looking at.
You know, Steve, there's also really good traction on this. You know, which is important on these trails where you can slip.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there is,
this second example, so those of you that are familiar with the battlefield, a lot of our roads to farmhouses are made out of this material we call antietam base. It's a graded aggregate base. And so it's a locally available material that we're standing at. So this section right here is that antietam base with a product that's more of like a dust control product. We wanted to give it a shot, see how it worked.
I like it.
From the last rainstorm that we just had, you can see a little bit of the erosion on the side. So it didn't really hold the material together very well.
By the way, you don't see that on the first one.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the water gained enough steam by the time it hit there.
Give the first one more credit.
Oh, you want to get, okay, just all right. Nice, well, I am interested in your opinion.
He told you not to argue with him.
Sorry.
All right.
This is my favorite, this one here.
So then this last and third sample is still the Antietam base aggregate, but there's this soil stabilizer, it's called Soil Shield, that's mixed in with it, and then it's compacted down. And this one, I think, held up the best. I think it'll be easier to maintain, and maintenance and sustainability is a critical component of our decision process here. So if it's locally available, and my team, which, by the way, I have a phenomenal park staff team. I know you all know this, but I just have to give them a little shout out. They are super, super awesome maintaining this park. But I want something they can maintain. That's not going to require them to order something in Wisconsin. Costs a lot more money when we have a locally available source here for something that we can maintain. So this one here, I think, has held up really well. We actually just made the final decision yesterday, pending Matt's approval, to go with this Soil Shield on the stabilized aggregate.
You get my approval on this one, so.
Thank you, sir.
This is the one.
All right,
We're going with this one, folks.
We have it. I know, sorry, Kafka, it's called Kafka, that first one out of Wisconsin. If you look at it though, look at the vegetation loves it.
Yeah.
You know, when we saw that, I mean, this has only been down 2 weeks. When we saw that vegetation growing out of it, I'm like, what is in there? Is it high in nitrogen? What, you know,
Right.
The plants are loving it. So if we did my fear with using that is that the trail system would be a vegetated trail system quickly.
And you don't have that problem here.
Yeah, so this is the trail down to the 83rd. You can see, well, the vegetation started growing, but it's very rocky. I mean, it is an ankle twisting walk down to the 83rd. So when we put this trail system down, which will be a 4-foot wide, stabilized aggregate trail system down, all the way down, it'll go all the way down to Warren Avenue, it should be safer.
Yeah.
It should be, not accessible. It's not handicap accessible, but it should be safer for our visitor. It will be a visual cue that, hey, here's the trail. Please walk here.
We had a request from a listener to get a view from the 83rd. Is it all right if we walk down there?
Yes,
all
sir.
right, come on. And I just want to, he wanted to see, I guess, their relation to the right flank of the 20th Main. I wasn't quite sure what he was talking about. Mark, watch your step here. This is really bad. Here, you go ahead of me. I'll hold on to you. Here, I'm holding on to your strap there. Okay. Careful, Mike and Dave. Just a little further so that we can shoot across the road. And stay right about here, over here, stay right about there. Okay, so, all right, so here's the 83rd Monument, and there's a view down to Warren Avenue over there. Steve, is this all going to be, the vegetation, is this going to be cleared, or what's the plan?
So if you see the white tape,
Yes.
that's the limits of the contractor's scope of work, so that's the limit of disturbance. So
Okay.
all that you see out there will still be there.
Will remain, okay. So this will all be as it is, but there's Warren Avenue, and then over to our left here, it's kind of hard to make out, I'm sure, through the trees and everything like that, but the higher ground there is the 20th Main. Their right flank is somewhere over there. I hope that helps. I can't remember the name of the person who wanted it, but I hope we did it for you there. All right, go ahead. So now where do we want to go?
How about we go up to the 44th?
44th, okay. Dave, you don't have any 83rd Pennsylvania stuff, do you?
Well, maybe.
Oh, okay.
I'll show it now. I was going to show it a little bit later. Let me figure out what pouch this is in. I actually have a battle damaged stock
That's cool.
of a Lorenz Austrian rifle,
Here, I'll hold it for you.
which is 1854 pattern. We know that some soldiers in the 83rd had Lorenz rifles. Doesn't mean that it came from the 83rd. It might have come from a Confederate unit. We don't know. But that was actually in the collection of Larry Eckert, who was the curator of the Rosenstiel Museum and was actually retained by the Park Service when the transfer of the museum was made. What was this, 1970, I think, or thereabouts?
Sounds about right.
So it's kind of a pretty neat relic, I think, and
Yeah.
whoever was carrying that, if they were carrying it, didn't come out of the Battle of Gettysburg very well. But I think a poignant reminder of the brutality of war and just the savagery of war,
Yeah,
and obviously the sacrifice.
because these are solid weapons, and to be
Yeah.
shattered like that. Now, you said this was found here, or?
On Little Round Top.
On Little Round Top.
We just don't know where on Little Round Top. But as we all know, after the battle, by the thousands people came here.
Sure.
Against federal regulations, and they were picking up all kinds of artifacts from the VMM plate to artifacts like this. And of course, if they were caught doing it, there was a severe penalty to pay for that. But anyway,
So even
a
back
great
then,
artifact.
no relic hunting on the park.
That's true.
But
But I understand over time, those regulations kind of relaxed.
Right.
And people would, as I understand it, back in the day, many, many years ago in the 20s, when people would actually hunt the battlefield and turn over, there's actually one famous relic hunter who would try to get his beer money by hunting the battlefield and turning the artifacts over to the Rosensteels. So you couldn't get away from it with it today, could you, Steve? In fact, I'm sure Steve didn't even want me to mention that, you know, but anyway,
That is
some of the history.
A bygone era, ladies and gentlemen. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? We have some
Exactly.
respect for the ground now. All right, so let's move along then to the 40th New York, or 44th New York, excuse me. Let's see if I've got any other questions while we're walking here, Steve.
Sure.
Let's see. Oh, here, this is a good one. Roy Mead, he asks, is there a plan to rehab the old country club?
Oh, the Harmon Farm?
Yes.
So we first need to put a cultural landscape plan together. And that cultural landscape plan or report will tell us everything that's important, what it would have looked like in 1863, and will give us recommendations on how to rehabilitate that space. So I think we're pretty close at finishing that cultural landscape report. Then once we finish it, then we got to compete for some money to do a design. And then, so it becomes a money game and capacity constraint at that point. So ultimately, yes, we want to rehabilitate that from a golf course into that battle landscape.
Right.
It's going to take some time.
It's going to take time. All right, but there is something underway.
Yeah.
Good, okay.
Yeah. Let's go up this way.
All right, we're going to go up this way. Mike, protect Mark. Please.
We want to let Mark go first?
Or you want to go first, Mark? Either way. Go ahead, you go first. Who wants to look at our butts? Go ahead. So how about this trail we're going on now? What's the plan for this?
So this one will get revegetated.
Okay. Obscured, you mean? Like?
Nope, actually, I don't have the plans with me, but I might be mistaken on that. This one might actually get formalized into that stabilized aggregate.
Okay. Because this, yeah, stop when you get up there to some level ground, Mark. Let everybody see that view we haven't seen in quite a while.
Yeah, you can see some reconstructed breastwork immediately in front of you.
Yeah. Wow, it's like perfect atmosphere and sunlight for this view today. It really... Oh, that's because of my polarized sunglasses. Never mind.
So there will be a trail, I think I'm mistaken that, where we just walked up, I believe will be another stabilized aggregate trail. We'll take you all the way around past 16th Michigan, all the way down Warren Avenue. So we'll formalize that trail. But you can also see some of the social trails where people coming from the 44th, walking straight down the hillside. So those social trails will revegetate, and hopefully nobody will make them a social trail again. Again, we got this nicely reconstructed breastwork here. My hope is that when the visitor comes, they can experience this space, you know, see the features of the battlefield that were here, and recognize that there's a formalized trail system, not just dirt paths, but a formalized trail system, and recognize that that's the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know how many of you watching at home remember what this wall looked like. Very similar to the 20th Maine. It was just a pile of rocks that looked like they once wanted to be a wall because people would just go down over it. So this is, I mean, this is really cool too. Yeah. When we went through the walkthrough and during the lecture series, Jeff Irwin did a lecture and talked about kind of cutting down into the ground here to the 1863 level, which is really neat because I didn't realize that we weren't walking on the 1863 level. Right. But you know what? It makes sense because when you look at old photos of Little Round Top and you match them to today, something looks off. And it's this monument because it's on fill.
That's true.
And yeah, so tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I can tell you what we're doing here, but in archaeology. So let me, in general, to talk to you about archaeology up here. So for every square inch of soil or earth that's being disturbed up here, we have an archaeologist here monitoring, and sometimes, and most of the time actually, ahead of the contractor to make sure that they're scanning with metal detectors the soil, the area where they're going to disturb it, to try to recover any artifacts, identify and recover any artifacts before the contractor gets to that point. So they've found a lot of things, and interestingly enough, the most things they've found are cut nails. They're finding so many cut nails up here, which is probably due to the construction of monuments.
Yeah, yeah.
And the formwork that they use to construct them. So a lot of cut nails, a lot of mini balls, which, we're documenting everything that we find up here. So like you said, when Jeff Irwin was up here looking at this trench, so where this wall, you can see the CMU block wall that was constructed up here, we had the archaeologist looking at the soil, and he's like, hey, that soil is a little darker down there, and determined that that's an organic layer and is likely the original surface of Little Round Top before they built this monument. And yes.
Well, go ahead. Maybe you were going to get to the wall.
We'll get to the wall.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely get to the wall. So this wall that you're seeing right here is going to frame in the new concrete sidewalk that will go around the 44th
That's up
New
at
York.
the base there, Mark.
You will not see that concrete block when this project is done.
The cinder
That will
block.
be faced with a stone veneer, and so it will be a little bit formalized to identify that curvature of that sidewalk, and that will then blend into the native landscape. This breastwork that you see right here will actually end up continuing into that wall.
Oh, neat.
Too.
Okay.
And very recently, within the last couple weeks, we've had a conversation over months about a handrail going around the 44th New York. And there's a lot of concerns with putting in a handrail. One is a visual intrusion to the landscape. Is it going to be very visible? Is it going to become a jungle gym for our visitors?
Good point. Yeah. Kids like
So
to
can we
swing.
maintain it? Is it going to do what we think it's going to do? Is it going to create safety, or is it going to create more problems?
Right.
Or do we do nothing and put nothing up there? Because code, we're measuring all the elevations, because there are code requirements that do trigger the need for a handrail, and all of the elevations and data we have says that we are not going to be required to put in a handrail. So we made the decision not to put a handrail up here.
Of course,
Good.
you know that if you've been up here, busy times, there's a lot of kids. They love to go up in the tower. They like to play here.
Yep.
I can see where that might be an issue,
Oh, yeah.
but we'll see where it leads, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think it's one of those decisions that no matter what decision you make, there's going to be some negative consequence or something unforeseen that's going to happen. In either case, we try to predict what those might be. We try to come up with the most balanced decision for the visitor experience, for safety, for preservation of this landscape. And I think not putting in a railing is a good decision.
Yeah,
I think it is. And it doesn't preclude us from installing one later if we had to. But
Right.
once you install one, it's kind of hard to reverse that and not have some scar on the concrete.
So Steve, was the foundation of the monument itself pretty well intact, or was there anything that you had to do to re-support it or to?
Yeah, so we did not expose the foundation.
Okay.
But when we started digging this trench, if you will, we noticed that there's a lot of boulders. So this monument, when they backfilled around it, there's a lot of boulders around it, and there's a lot of voids in those boulders. And so we're not sure to what extent those voids existed, if they were a structural issue or not. The monument hasn't moved, so we don't think they were. But as a measure of precaution and safety, since we're up here, we filled those voids
All right.
with flowable fill, and then we built this wall on top of that.
So it's pretty sturdy. Pretty
It's
stable.
not going.
We're not in danger right now.
Yeah. No.
No, sir.
All right. So let's see. What's the best way to continue on? It
Let's
doesn't look
walk
like this
around,
way. Yeah. We'll go
Because
around.
I respect Mark
Yeah.
and his ankles. And so we're going to walk around to the left, and then as soon as we get around the 44th New York, we'll go back to the up to the left to the original trail surface.
Yeah, I do have a couple things from the 140th New York.
All right.
We're going to get over
So
by
we'll get up there.
O'Rourke.
Sounds good. So Dave,
Yes.
you're on the board of the Gettysburg Foundation, correct?
Yes, sir, I am.
So tell everybody in the audience why it's important to support the Gettysburg Foundation.
Well, because the mission of the Gettysburg Foundation is pure and simply to support the work of Gettysburg National Military Park and now Eisenhower National Historic Site.
Okay.
And that, to me, is a sacred mission.
I agree.
For those of us who grew up loving this battlefield, as I did, coming here with my parents during the centennial and beyond, I think this is a place where the American people can get a view of their history and what it meant, a turning point in our history. But obviously the park has a monumental task. And I don't care how much Congress gives them, there's never enough to do what we would like to do.
Sure.
So I will say the foundation gave $3 million to this project. We did it through the donations of our friends, through various foundations, through corporate gifts. People got behind it. And I can tell you, Steve, first of all, it's an honor for us to be working with you and your team. You're doing a great job. And I'm so thankful to the people that would give to us, knowing that the money is going to go to Gettysburg National Military Park.
They love this place.
Yeah.
And yeah, you guys are doing the Lord's work. So how would people donate to you? What's the website?
Well, they can do a number of different things. Just go to the web. It's just Gettysburg Foundation. I think it's .org
probably.
Yeah, and or come to Gettysburg, and you can do it right at the friend's desk, which is right in the lobby of the visitor center, or call the foundation.
There's different levels of membership too, right?
There are
members, and that helps.
Absolutely, and it can be as low as what you want to give, all the way up to as high as you'd like to give. I just love the work here, so I try to give beyond the maximum gift.
Yeah.
Just I don't know. I'm kind of like that.
Yeah,
just kind of anal about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's good.
It doesn't mean anything.
Can I get on this
Of course,
conversation?
yeah.
So I just want to thank David and the foundation and everyone that supports the foundation, because it is critically important to have a public-private partnership, and they are our exclusive philanthropic partner for the park to get this work done. $3.2 million were raised by the foundation. It was matched with federal dollars to be able to make this happen. It's an $11 million project, and we can't do it without you, the public, without the foundation. So thank you for that. And
you're welcome.
I think another thing, if for those of you that are members and have seen it already, the foundation's doing an appeal right now because they're helping us fund museum staffing positions, which are going to care for the artifacts that we're pulling out of the ground here.
Okay.
So it's a beautiful relationship, and I just can't thank the foundation, the public enough for supporting your park, because it's not about me. It's not about the National Park Service. We have a mission to do. We have legislation's requiring us to mandate this, and it's our pleasure and honor to do so. But we can't do it without the public's input and support.
And let me just say two more things real quickly. I hope we're okay time-wise. First of all, I don't know if everybody realizes that the Gettysburg Foundation was created specifically to solicit funding and then build a museum and visitor center, which we own to this day. The Park Service is our partner, and I hesitate to say tenant, but they own the museum collection, we own the building. It is a great partnership, and I was privileged a couple of years ago in 20 to 21 to serve as interim president, and I just want to put in a plug for my friend Steve Sims, because working with Steve was an unbelievably rewarding experience. And I know him to be who he is, which is a man of honor and integrity, and he does his job. And we're very lucky to have Steve here. And the foundation respects you, Steve, and we appreciate you.
I agree.
Thank you, Dave.
I agree. Absolutely agree. All right. Now wait, there was.
Where do you go from here?
That
sounds like
folks.
the end.
Good night.
Sorry. We did what no one's ever done before. We got you off track.
Do you want to walk up here?
You shut me up. I got nothing. No, where were we going to go? Oh, we were going to go up the hill here. But Mark, did you get a shot of this here? This is a kind of different view. Is this mainly just so that they can get equipment up here, or is this going to be a path because it's very clear? It used to be all shrubs and stuff.
So I'll get up here so everyone can see me pointing and trying to figure out what I'm trying to say. So from up here, we're going to have exposed aggregate concrete paths that go around the 44th New York. But coming off of that, we'll have a couple steps down to that stabilized aggregate, which will take you around the monument, and it'll take you down to the trail and down to Chamberlain Avenue. So where you're standing, Matt and David, will be a stabilized aggregate trail.
Okay. So people will be able to come up here the back way without
Which-
breaking their legs like it used to be, because it was just a social trail.
Well, this was
right?
all eroded away
Yeah.
as well. And you know, just a little interesting fact, just yesterday we were having a conversation about this concrete going around the monument. On the front side, or I should say on the west-facing side of the monument, there's a granite step, and you can kind of see the granite step on the east side over here that's under a piece of plywood, and the concrete comes up flush with that. So people can come right off the concrete into the monument, but they were going to retain this as like a 3.5-inch step off of the east side.
Yeah.
And so we were having this, it's amazing, this lengthy conversation of why don't we make it match the west side? So when the visitor, and you know, if you're a first-time visitor or it's really busy, you're probably not watching your feet as closely and where you're walking. And a 3.5-inch step is kind of dangerous. Now, people aren't used to 3.5-inch steps. So we actually are going to make that decision, try and push the design team to make that concrete level with that granite step on the east side. So it's the same on both sides.
Yeah, okay.
So it's that level of detail where my team is coming out here and we're having that kind of conversation to make sure that it looks purposeful and is safe.
Yeah, good. All right. Shall we move up to
go up there.
Patty O'Rourke? Everybody watch your steps, Mark. Go ahead of me, please. There, I almost tripped you. Forget the rocks. Watch my feet. All right, now, so this is looking different too here. The path is all torn up. It's no longer the asphalt we remember. There's another view. Give them a view there. They miss it.
So this section of trail that we're standing on right now will end up being stabilized aggregate.
Okay.
Concrete on the backside to identify that accessible path, but this side up here, we're going to make stabilized aggregate. So you're not going to have that asphalt that you're used to. There'll
Okay.
be that stone.
I never liked the asphalt anyway.
No, it was dangerous, too.
Yeah, it just didn't look good.
And then over to my right, directly behind Mark, where I'm pointing at, you can see this area is kind of denuded of any topsoil or vegetation. Well, this is where people gathered.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're actually going to formalize that gathering space with stabilized aggregate all the way up to the breastwork off of this sidewalk. And so it's where there's 4 different gathering spaces that we're creating up here for groups and others, with some interpretive signage as well, to really help people identify, here's where I can gather, here's where I can stand, and try not to wear away this hillside.
I like that as we went through on the walkthrough last week, you were pointing out these things, and basically it sounds like the Park Service's attitude is, if this is where the people naturally went, then let's formalize it for them instead of obscure it or obliterate it so that they can't do it and they only go where we want them to. Like it's not a like this is how it's going to be type of thing. This is okay, so we're going to work with you. We're going to help the public
Right.
formalize what they've already been doing naturally.
Yeah, and
Right.
you know, I think it comes down to the fundamental mission of the National Park Service, which is kind of conflicting with itself. We have
Yeah.
a preservation and protection mission and a mission to provide for the visitor enjoyment. And visitor enjoyment results in use or eroded hillsides. So how do we preserve something at the same time we're providing access? And so it's a balance. And so my team, again, kudos to them, are extremely brilliant in helping collaboratively find ways to find that balance of access and preservation. And which means not everything's going to be accessible because we still have to preserve and protect this resource, but we're going to provide that level of access that the public is needing and demanding.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, they're going to go where they want to go anyway.
Right, exactly.
So we might as well try to help provide those spaces, purposeful spaces, to allow the visitor to experience this hallowed ground.
Yeah. You have some artifacts.
A couple.
All right.
So here we are at what is the statue of Patrick O'Rourke. As your viewers know, if you rub the wood, it brings you good luck.
Brings you a splinter.
Now, I actually have a couple of things. I showed you earlier the VMM plate, and,
Yes.
and that was a
It's the
cartridge
VMM
box
from
plate.
before.
This is a state of New York belt plate.
No, this is
and I
much
wanted to
heavier.
show the difference
Oh,
because
okay.
just because that's what it would look like if it came out of the ground or has been here for a long time. I've been in a collection for a long time. The patinas are so different. The backside you can see is different. This is completely filled with lead where the box plate isn't. There were two New York regiments side by side up here, different time. You know, you got the 44th and you've got the 140th. So it could have come from either. I like to think it's the 140th because I just think the Patrick O'Rourke story is a great one. He came from Rochester, New York, which is near where I came from. But anyway, in addition to the belt plates, I do have somewhere here an artifact that I think is pretty cool. This is a, go ahead and take it. This is a 7-shot Moore revolver, okay?
7-shot.
It's made by the Moore Patent Arms Company in 1860. It's popular with New York officers for a number of reasons. One, it's 7 shots. It's kind of light. It's 32 caliber, but there's also this neat feature too, where if you push this, the whole cylinder and barrel kind of, that's unique to this gun at that time. So and it took brass cartridges or metallic cartridges.
Right.
So it was very popular with New York officers. This particular gun was carried by the commander of Company D of the 140th New York here on Little Round Top. His name was Elwell Otis, a businessman from Rochester, New York. It was presented by his friends, which you can see on the back strap of the gun. Okay, and Otis will survive Gettysburg. He was a friend of O'Rourke's. O'Rourke did not, of course. And he will be shot in the face at Petersburg. The bullet will go through his cheek and come out the back behind his ear. It was thought to be a mortal wound, but he will survive. And he will carry that gun into the Little Bighorn campaign in 1876-77.
Really?
He'll command the 22nd Infantry. He will have a confrontation directly with Sitting Bull in October of 1876, in which Sitting Bull says, "What are you doing chasing me? You're scaring the buffalo off. Just leave me alone." And of course, Otis will say, "I'm here to do my job, so you can run, but we're going to find you."
Yeah.
He will go on to serve as a Major General in the Spanish-American War, probably not carrying that pistol, but he will be in charge of all the infantry forces in the Philippines and at one time the 8th Corps in the Span-Am War. He will return to Rochester in 1900. They will hold an Elwell Otis Day on June 15th of 1900. He's a local hero. He'll die in 1909, be buried in Rochester, and a short time later, Congress will order that his body be exhumed and taken to Arlington. I recently spoke to the curator of Arlington National Cemetery and said, "There's no record of why this happened. Can you tell me?" And he said, "I really can't. It's just sometimes Congress does things like that." So a really great piece of an officer who was right here where we're standing on July 2nd
This
of
is cool.
1863.
And it feels nice in the hand,
Yeah.
too.
By the way, that was what Cole Younger was carrying in the Great Raid where
No
he
kidding.
was shot. Yeah, a 7-shot Moore revolver. Yeah.
Wow, that's
So
neat. That's
32
awesome.
caliber. Okay. You know what? Let me do one last thing, and then I'll
Sure.
be done with my artifacts.
Oh, okay.
Because I also have a piece that was found here on Little Round Top, a little different. This is a 1860 Colt Army revolver,
yeah.
which is pretty standard. There were Navies, which was a little bit smaller, Colt Navies, but in this particular case, this was found on Little Round Top. I just wanted to show you the difference of a piece that was actually found by a farmer who farmed the backside of Little Round Top long ago. Probably even before the park ever owned this property. And perhaps it even came off park property, but it was in the Little Round Top area. But it's a good example of what an artifact that's been in the ground looks like versus one that has been preserved by a family for all these years.
And we're sure there's nothing in that chamber I'm pointing at my belly, right? Yeah, okay.
Not really, no.
No, we are. I can see there's no ball in there.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, though.
So that's just an illustration, that's
Yeah.
all. And that's about all I have for today.
Thanks,
that would
Dave.
fit in this satchel.
Awesome. Well, there's good stuff there. Thank you. Thank you. Steve, Dave said something that reminded me of what I was trying to say before when I lost my words. People, one of the criticisms that people had when this first was being closed was, "Oh, they're closing it for the 160th. Why would they do that for the 160th?" But explain to them how the whole process of, how this worked. You didn't choose to do it. From what I understand, tell me if I'm wrong. 10 so years ago, over a decade ago, this project was approved, but the money didn't come available until last year or this year, or what? How does that work?
It's complicated. It's complicated. It's a phenomenal question. Federal funding is, a mysterious thing sometimes, and even donated funding. So it's all got to align. So this project, I believe, was conceived 2009 or 2011, one of those 2 years. And so it started really big. The original concept was a huge scope of work. I think there's a visitor contact station that was going to be over on Wheatfield, and I think the bus parking was probably even more expanded than what we're doing here. And so that project was making its way through reviews and approvals, and then we had a period of time before my arrival where we had rotating superintendents for about 2.5 years. And during that 2.5 year period, the project was stopped because there was no permanent leadership here in the park. And so they stopped the project. When I got here, one of my first orders of business was to restart this project, finish the design, because people had already donated towards this project. And time is money. The longer we wait, the more expensive things are going to get.
Sure.
So we had basically not a fixed amount of money, but we had limited amount of resources to get this done, and so we needed to finish the design and get this project started, or restarted, I should say. And before that money expires, the federal money expires as well. So there's federal transportation money in this, there's Helium Act money in this, there's donated money in this, there's other pots of Park Service money that have gone into making this happen. So we cobbled all that together so that we can achieve what we set out to do about a decade ago. So as far as that schedule from when the design completed, we just need to keep that momentum going. And so we couldn't just say, stop, let's wait a year and let the 1/60th pass before we put this out for bid, because bid prices, especially with recent inflation increases, we may not have been able to afford the project.
That's a good point, yeah.
So we wanted to get this with the money that we had available. We wanted to design to the cost, or to design to the amount of funding that we had available. And the longer we pushed out that schedule, the more expensive it got. So sooner is cheaper.
Yeah.
That doesn't prevent the visitor from visiting the other 6,000 acres of the battlefield. So there's 15 acres that are closed.
Yeah.
Granted, this is a very, very special part of the battlefield. Critically important to the battle. I get it. But we need to get this project done. It's been loved to death, and there's no good time.
Right.
Honestly, there's no good time.
It's like they say, like, I don't want to have a kid till I'm ready, and they say you're never ready to have a kid, even when you think you're ready. So it's kind of that type of thing. Like, you just got to do it.
Just got to do it. So we've got this project going on. We've got the roadway project to the visitor center going on right now, and later this summer and fall, we're going to be repaving a lot of park roads.
Oh yeah?
A lot of park roads.
Okay.
So we're tearing the Band-Aid off, and we're getting this park preserved and protected. We're resurfacing these roadways so that they're safe. We're going to take care of some of the shoulders where you have those steep drop-offs off the cars and buses as they're trying to get out. So it's a disruption, but again, we got to preserve and protect this place. We got to make it safe. And while we've got Little Round Top closed, we might as well get the rest of this work done.
So
Sure.
Steve, this is a huge amount of money this is going to take. Where is the funding coming from? Has the government helped you with this, or does it come from private grants and foundations and that type of thing?
Yeah, as I said earlier, so we have many pots of money that are going towards Little Round Top and the roadway resurfacing. So federal highway transportation money, Helium Act money, donated funds, and then other pots of construction money that the Park Service
Because
manages.
you're also doing the renovation on a lot of the battlefield houses, right?
Yep. Yeah.
You've just finished Warfield and the First Shot House. I mean, you guys have it going on.
Yeah, we got the Benner House rehab, we got the Rose Farmhouse rehab that we just started. We're going to put a new roof on Eisenhower National Historic Site, the home of Eisenhower.
Yep.
We're going to rehab the reception center at Eisenhower. We're going to replace the fence along Millerstown Road. We're doing the stabilization over at Klingel that we've done, and we're still trying to decide what we're going to do moving forward with Klingel. But there's a lot happening.
Yeah.
A lot of
There really is.
a lot of work happening, and it's because this place requires preservation, requires work, and
And it deserves it.
it deserves it. Absolutely.
So maybe a little frustration when you come and visit. Some of your favorite spots might not be available, but it's all for good. And when it's all done, I think you're going to like it. We have more to see, so we can go on and see all that. While we're walking, Steve, one of the big hot button topics of the year has been the beavers.
What beavers? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yes, let's get up to Hazlitt's and let's get a real good look
At the lake?
at Plum Run.
Okay. Plum Run and what it is turned into. But there's some news on that. Good news for the people that are like me. We're on Team Mozart, not Team Beaver. And so there's good news for us, and there's good news for Team Beaver. It's a win-win, I think, for everybody.
Matt, I appreciate you saying that. I think
you're
so.
welcome.
I think what we've done, and I'll explain it when we get up to the top and Mark can get a good view of it.
Yeah.
What we've done is, it's an iterative process for one. It's a continuous process of reviewing and monitoring, because our, again, back to preservation mission is paramount. We want to make sure that our resources are preserved, but at the same time, Park Service policy requires us to coexist with nature and to allow natural processes to evolve and continue as long as they're not in conflict with our cultural resources that we're trying to preserve and protect. Mm-hmm. So, along Plum Run, we do have a family of beavers. And over to the north side of Plum Run, you can see a little bit larger body of water. Underneath that body of water is Plum Run. In the middle of it,
bed.
you'll see a little mound. That little mound is the Beaver Lodge.
Yeah, let's
And
see.
so
Can you
that's
see
where
that,
our
Mark?
beavers have taken residence.
The
Now,
little mound that kind of looks like it's dry, like straight in the middle of the. See, there's like grassy patches, and then there's this mound. It looks maybe like it's a boulder. Is that what it is, or is it the one?
kind of looks like a big boulder in
Yeah,
the middle, doesn't
right.
it? So the beavers have been around here for a long time. Now, back in 1863, they're well hunted, and the beaver population was pretty low. They're not hunted as much, I don't think, in this area. And the beaver population, as I understand it, and I'm not a biologist, but as I understand it, in this area in Adams County, beaver population's growing. And these aren't the only beavers in the park.
Right. Oh, really?
So, the population is growing, and they're going to do what beavers do. They're going to build dams and slow-moving bodies of water. So they found a spot down here that they really liked. They'd been up here, at least my staff has observed them up in this area for the last 10 years, but they never stuck around. So we kind of thought initially that, okay, we see a beaver, they'll do what they've always done and move on. Well, this team of beavers here, this family, decided they would like to stay. And they've built, to my understanding, 4 separate dams. That body water we see is held back by one dam, and then there's a few more as you move south along Plum Run. We've been monitoring this since they arrived, and we got to the point near the 40th New York Monument. Now, I don't know if Mark can see that. We can move so he can see it, but near the 40th New York.
3 trees.
Mozart
there. You're not going to see it.
That you referenced.
That's right. The
Yes.
Mozart reference, or the regiment.
For our
yeah.
Team Mozart out there, we noticed that the water was coming up close to the monument. Monument's safe, we're monitoring it, we're taking measurements on it. Hasn't moved, has not moved.
Has not sunk into the ground.
Hasn't moved at all. So, but the water was lapping up against the base of the monument during heavy rain periods, times where there's plenty of rain. And what that's allowing to happen is some of the vegetation would die. And when the vegetation dies, then the soil can erode. And we're like, well, let's prevent any potential of anything happening to that monument. So what we did is that we worked with a company, and their name is Beaver Deceivers International. And this company came out, and we checked on them. They work in other parks as well, national parks, and they have this device, which is essentially a culvert that goes through the beaver dam. And then they deceive the beaver by obscuring the inlet and the outlet of this culvert.
Okay.
And so we installed 3 of these in the dams. And if you can see around the 40th New York right now, Mark, you got a shot of it?
No. There's
How about
3
we move
trees
over to
in
the
way.
left of the 91st?
Okay, let's move over here, Mark.
I
Yeah,
want to
these
make
beaver
sure.
deceivers are cool because you keep the dam, but you just make a little breach in the dam where the pipe
Right.
goes through,
Right.
and it tricks the beavers, apparently.
I
Because
just
so
want to make.
far they haven't blocked it up.
I want to make sure everyone sees what I see. And if you don't see what I see, oh, it's behind that pine tree.
Yeah, it's behind the cedar-looking thing.
All right, you're going to get your steps in today, Mark. All right. We're going to end up back.
Might as well go back to where we started.
All right, you can kind of see it over here.
Yeah, you
Now,
can see it between the middle tree and the left tree.
What I see is dry ground.
Yes. No. Yeah. Exactly right.
I see dry ground around the 40th.
But not only that, but below, just south of the main pond, was another pond that is no longer there because of
It's
these
reduced.
beaver deceivers.
It's reduced.
Yeah.
And so our goal here, and so we put 3 in, we're monitoring. right now, and we're probably going to have about at least a 1-year monitoring period to see how they work, through the different seasons and the different things that beavers do, because we want to make sure that this works. We want to keep that monument dry, and when Little Round Top reopens, which means Warren Avenue reopens, which means access to that monument reopens, we want to make sure people can access that monument and have dry feet. So we're there right now, and we anticipate we'll continue to be there with these beaver deceivers, which also allows the beavers to stay. Now with that larger body of water to the north, we're going to evaluate that next year to see if, one, if the beavers have created a larger body of water, if there's any other impacts to, say, Crawford Avenue. But, my question is, can we reduce the surface area of that body of water? Completely, because if those beavers go, because their water source goes, well, they may not go, for one. They may start building other dams and circumventing our beavers deceivers. So I think there's a balance here of deceiving them to the point where they don't just say, oh, I see what you're doing, and build other dams. So we want to find that balance to coexist, because the beavers are actually doing some good, and I know that's probably hard for some of you to believe, but beavers love woody vegetation. And so they're helping us maintain less woody vegetation down there.
So this is something,
Plum Run.
my friend and I were walking down Crawford Avenue, and we were looking at the 40th New York, and I said, 3 years ago, we did a tour, and it started at the 40th New York, and we had to go off of a footpath on Warren Avenue into where the 40th is, and the 40th was surrounded by bushes that were taller than a man. And that's why that's one of the reasons we had to go that way, but you couldn't see outside of the area, and now none of that's there.
None of that's
So the beavers, they did a little good there, I think.
From Team Mozart.
From Team Mozart, yeah,
Okay.
because I want to see, I am a big fan of the clearing. Typically not anywhere else, but here on this park, I think that, what wasn't there in 1863 should be gone, because I think it's a great tool. This is an outdoor classroom in my mind. And I think it should be preserved as 1863. And I know, some people that don't care much about the history, but like to come here to jog or, ride bikes or, do something recreational. They like the woods, they like the trees, but that's not the purpose of this place. There's other national parks where you could go for the nature. Even though we have a respect for the nature and we take care of the nature, the main focus of this place, to me at least, and I think really that's what it is history, preserving the history of what happened. We wouldn't care about this ground if there was no battle here. This would be shopping malls and neighborhoods if there was no battle here by now. So I think, letting people understand what happened here should be the most important thing that we do.
Yeah.
And then jog.
So you can get around the battlefield. So in the slaughter pen area, we actually started some clearing as well. The intent and hope is that by the time we reopen Little Round Top, more of that will be cleared out as well. So it's
nice.
amazing what happens in rainy weather. Things start to grow. So we got to maintain it. I think another thing I'd love to highlight while we're at it is, I know, and I'm surprised we haven't gotten a question about adoptive position so far this morning, but the adoptive position program was, highly regarded. People loved it, and it's been on hold since the pandemic hit. But I have some good news.
Oh.
So we are actually going to hire a full-time, year-round volunteer coordinator.
Nice, okay.
Now, that's not a promise that the adoptive position, as we formerly knew it, is going to be backed in the exact same way.
Okay.
But we're going to take a look at what are the park's needs. If we have clearing events that are needed, we may have a volunteer work day. You've actually done one of these for us.
Done it,
Thank you, Matt.
right up on top of...
on Devil's Den.
Yeah.
And did a phenomenal job. And
It was all me.
But within what, 2 hours?
2 hours.
2 hours.
I had stuff to do, so I didn't have time to dally.
You cleared all that, and what a huge positive impact that the volunteer program can have on preserving, protecting this resource. And the volunteers, they love this place. It's their park, and they want to take care of it, and we want to foster that. I think the volunteer program is critically important to have here. And so that will be coming back. We're just beginning the recruitment process. For those of you that follow congressional legislation, there's this law called the Inflation Reduction Act, and the park received some money from that, and so we're going to kick off this volunteer program by hiring this person out of that funding.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
good. I thought that was a fantastic program to have, and I was sorry to see it go, but I'm glad it's coming back in some form.
It'll come back in some form.
Yeah.
We're kicking around the ideas of maybe we have hollow ground heroes.
Ooh, that I
Right?
like.
I don't
Yeah.
know. We'll see if it catches.
I've always wanted to be called a hero.
But there's so many things that need to be done, and the staff that I have, as phenomenal as they are, and they are phenomenal, we can't do it all.
No.
Can't do it all. And that's the lovely thing about the partnership with the foundation, a volunteer program. We're all part of this this mission to preserve and protect this special place.
And that's the thing, and your staff is very friendly, so when you interact with Park Service people, everybody's pleasant, everybody's nice, which is, the sign of a professional. But I think it's beyond that with the group that you have here. I think everybody's just really stellar people.
They are.
And it almost like if you're a regular to here and you interact with these people often, you kind of feel like you're visiting friends, and you're not visiting federal employees on federal land at a park. This is a place that you love, and the same friendly people are around, and it kind of feels, in an odd sense, kind of like it's like a family or some kind of a community at least.
Community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people do want to help, and they want to see, something get fixed. I know over the summer last year, when the grass in certain areas seemed to be getting like a little too high for my liking, I was like, just give me a godforsaken lawnmower and I'll do it myself, I'll volunteer to cut it. But what about that though? Because it seemed like there was like a period of time where it seemed like they were just letting everything go. Is that a staffing issue, or is that part of the plan?
Yeah, so we have an open space management plan. And, like this hillside right here, you can't put a lawnmower in this hillside.
No.
And so we try to manage vegetation based on its location, its challenges, its obstacles. Does it have a wetland in it? Is it an agricultural field? Or, there's a whole lot of things that we got to look at when we're managing spaces. But, if it can't be mowed like here, we're going to use volunteers, maybe mechanically come in and take out some of the woody stuff, or we use prescribed fire to manage it. Where there's key visitor areas like around Devil's Den, we mow that. We mow the edges of the roadway. We'll make sure people get to those spaces. But we can't mow everything because it'll just grow still. Mm-hmm. So it might be once a year or twice a year that we'll come and knock it down and make sure that it's managed, or we'll use prescribed fire. So no, we're not mowing everything to look like a lawn.
Right.
We can't, and that also doesn't provide any kind of natural habitat. Some of these warm season grass fields provide a wonderful habitat for ground nesting birds, and which is really important to our environment. So there's other factors to consider when we're managing a landscape.
Sure.
We want to make sure that it resembles that 1863 appearance or that commemorative era appearance, but we got to find that balance between that natural resource, that cultural resource, and so it'll ebb and flow.
Very good.
And did we mow those fields down eventually?
Eventually they
Okay.
did, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
And I didn't have to lift a finger. Let's go up, because there's
Up to Hazlitt's?
yeah, let's go up to Hazlitt, and then there's other stuff that is going to be new for people, I think, as far as parking goes, and some things on the north slope of the hill.
Yeah,
All right. How you doing for time?
I'm awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about Hazlitt's is that we want to make sure that it became accessible. You can see all these little boulders, kind of hard to walk around because all the soil's gotten eroded from people coming around where the cannons used to be up here. Mm-hmm. And when the designer designed this area, they'd actually put a retaining wall on the eastern slope, if you will. It'd be like 5 or 6 foot
there.
tall retaining wall,
Right.
which would then hold in this soil, if you will, and this concrete that was going to go up here.
Uh-huh.
And so when we first had the contractor stake this out for us and got the team up here again, we're like, retaining wall. That's the first thing people are going to see when they park in the parking lot, is this huge retaining wall. And the story of Hazlitt dragging the cannons up this slope, how do you interpret that when now you have this big retaining wall? So we eliminated the retaining wall.
Okay.
And reduced the scope of the stabilized aggregate that we're putting in around here, around Hazlitt's Battery. So another good decision, I think, from the park to, again, a lighter touch on this landscape.
So the inscription on the Hazlitt weed rock there, It won't be any more accessible. Still be accessible, but
It'll still be there.
yep, still there.
Yes.
Okay.
So then, as we're looking at the parking lot, and I think this is a really good viewpoint from here.
Sure.
We got the beautiful porta-johns that the contractor has. But if you can imagine a wider roadway, in other words, behind those porta-johns to the east, about 10 to 15 feet will be a retaining wall. So we will put a retaining wall on that eastern facing slope, Little Round Top, to then build up and create bus parking. So there's going to be 4 bus parking spots up here. The buses will then be able to offload onto a sidewalk, which then can go to the south or north to a crosswalk to come over here to Little Round Top. So there's going to be 4 bus parking spots up here. Further to the north, there's going to be 3 more bus parking spots. If you visited Little Round Top before, you know that before you would come up Little Round Top, park on the left-hand side of the road, and offload into traffic.
Right.
So those spots that the buses were using will become handicap and vehicle parking. So that's going to remain the same. We're adding the bus parking on the far side. So that's the safety, that's the access to Little Round Top.
Good. Okay. Very nice. So how about further down? Let's go down. Yeah, oh yeah, there's something missing here. Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. Thank you.
So, yes. Let me get on this boulder.
That
So-
doesn't look familiar.
This boulder has been underneath asphalt for I don't know how long, but there used to be a retaining wall that used to go around. And if those of you are familiar with it, there was a couple interpretive signage pieces up here, retaining wall, and then an asphalt path that would lead you down to Governor Warren. But this boulder was concealed by that. But we removed that retaining wall, found the boulder. So we're going to actually clean it off. There's still some asphalt and whatnot that's on it, but we're going to try to clean it up a little bit more. But now we've got a feature of the battlefield, the landscape that was previously concealed that we brought back out to sunlight.
Someone said here, let's see, we're going back to talking about volunteers.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll announce this when it's ready, but do you know off the top of your head now, how would people apply for that if they wanted to do it?
Yeah, when we're ready, we'll definitely put something out to let people know how they can volunteer. But federal hiring process can take a little bit of time, and we're just beginning this. So it's going to be 6 months to a year before we can really get that underway.
Somebody suggested using goats to remove vegetation.
Okay.
What do you think about that, though? Something like, you know how the park leases fields to farmers? Let's say over on Culp's Hill, you guys did that clearing a few years ago. To maintain that, wouldn't it be easier to just barbed wire out an area, let a cattleman come in and let the cows graze there for a while and eat everything? You know, like
It's
in
an
the olden
option.
days.
I'm not thoroughly familiar with the assessment that was done for open space management. I'm sure using goats or cattle to graze was an option that was considered, but I think they probably went with mechanical and fire instead. I don't know that goats are easy. I'm not that familiar with it, but don't you have to put a whole fence around that area? And then
Well,
you have
that's
to
a-
manage them,
yeah,
and
you'd
then,
have to keep
then
an
you've
eye.
blocked off the visitor from that space, and then what if you have
do it
scapegoats?
piece by piece? Scapegoats?
But maybe we could do yoga on the battlefield with goats.
Goat yoga.
I'm kidding, kidding.
That'd be great.
But yeah, I would have to look into the conversations about that decision process, but my guess is it's probably very time-consuming to manage, and I don't know that they would be free either.
Well, no, and then you'd have to worry about visitors, trying to pet them or something and getting hurt or hurting them or.
And we'd have to evaluate what kind of impact they would have on the landscape too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right, and then let's see if I have anything else here from the comments section while we're up here. You're welcome, Beth. No problem. Let's see. I didn't know the National Park Service was in the business of digging holes. LOL. In all seriousness, I think it's fantastic what you were doing. It will be worth it. Okay, that's what we got so far.
Okay.
All right, now. Oh, somebody asked this, and I asked this to you last week when we were up here. The Warren Rock.
Yeah.
Is there any plan to make the sign that says "Do not climb on this boulder" readable to the people who use the sign to pull themselves up onto the boulder? Like
There-
neon lettering or something.
So that sign's historic.
Yes, it
And
is.
so we're not going to modify that sign.
Okay.
We'll preserve it. and we'll
Maybe
protect it as
what about
best we
like
can.
What about a little light in front of it that shines on it so you can see it? Actually, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, have you seen this or somebody else? I feel like I've seen an old picture, like, 10 or 20 years after it was put up maybe, where the lettering was painted white. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Am I imagining that? Mike, have you ever seen that? Dave? No? Maybe I'm imagining it. But if I'm not imagining it, and that really did happen, that would be historic, right, to do that?
But Matt, do you really think people aren't reading that sign?
I know. It just annoys me so much when I see
my-
somebody grab the sign and hoist themselves up, Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, my hope is that by formalizing these paths,
Yeah.
that, again, people will see that this is where they're supposed to stay and walk, that they'll respect this hillside for what it is, what it represents, and the artifacts that are up here. That's my hope.
That's
and
mine
I think
too.
that takes education.
Yeah.
It takes what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
To educate the public, to help them understand how precious and important this place is. And I think once people understand how precious and important this place is, that it's not a jungle gym, it's not a playground, that it really has blood on the ground and what that means, I think people will respect it a little bit better.
I think you're right.
That's a huge part of the Park Service's mission is education. And if we can educate and get that word out, hopefully we don't have to put a wall around it to keep people off of it. We can allow them to...
It really goes for every monument on the battlefield.
Sure, yeah.
And I try to tell people about back in the 1880s and 90s when these monuments are being dedicated and 30, 40, or 50 veterans are coming back and they're gathered around for the dedicatory message and everything else. Their whole lives are kind of wrapped up in that, what they're proud of, what their losses were, their lost youth, everything. I mean, these things meant so much to the veterans that were here. And I wish that message could be gotten across as well, because people do climb on the monuments. They do climb on the cannons. And it's a fact of life on this battlefield, but maybe there's a way to make it better in the future. I hope so.
Electrifying them. Maybe
Yeah, put barbed wire around it. Why not?
No, that's visually bad, but
It's not very friendly, Matt.
Well, I'm not sure. I'd say it's not, I don't know. Well, but these monuments were a source of healing for these veterans. That's the thing. It's like it's not just like, hey, look what we did.
Yep.
This is how they healed.
It's lost youth. It's, gosh, you're right.
Yeah.
It's PTSD.
Yes. And so a lot of people, I don't think, realize that when a lot of people don't realize that it was the veterans themselves who put these monuments up.
Right.
And so when they come up here, they think it's, the government put it up, let's just climb all over it. And then that's not the case.
Well, these monuments, as Steve has pointed out, are part of the cultural landscape now.
Yeah. Oh, they're historic artifacts in and of themselves. Yep. Oh, bubble wrap. Oh,
Keep
God.
it on there. No, we can't.
What?
Keep it on there. Just kidding.
So this is the rock we were talking about, ladies and gentlemen. And Mark, I'll show you what I was talking about. This here is a sign that says, do not climb on the boulder. And so often I'll be up here, watching the sunset or whatever. There's a family here. Mom or dad says, oh, get up by the statue and take a picture. So the kid comes over, grabs this, pulls themselves up, and goes and takes a picture with the statue. The worst part is when a full-grown adult does it. That's the worst part. And it just annoys me, that's all. That's all. I mean, it's, who am I? Just one person annoyed by people using a sign that says do not climb on the boulder to pull themselves up on the boulder. It's kind of ironic and whatever.
You don't suppose that because Warren's on the rock, they think it's okay?
I think it is. Yeah, they want to get up there and see what he sees and get a picture with him. It's, it is, but I love this view too. This is such a cool,
Yeah.
especially when the sun's going down. So, okay, anything different about this area here?
Yeah, so we're going to have the exposed aggregate concrete come through here, 6 foot wide, all the way to that boulder and stop. Between the concrete and, we'll call it the Warren Rock, we'll put stabilized aggregate in that space because nothing's going to grow in there. People will just trample whatever's in there. Mm-hmm. So we'll put some stabilized aggregate down there. There's a little gathering space a little bit to the south of where we're standing that's going to be constructed. And that's pretty
So would there be a retaining wall of any sort here?
No, just what's around the 91st. There's not going to be a new retaining wall. There might be.
So you can hold that ground, you think?
I think with this gathering
With that
space, that will
stuff.
be basically where those 2 stakes are. You can kind of see it.
Oh, yeah.
There might have to be like a 6-inch stone or something to kind of frame in that gathering space.
But as far as this pretty severe slope here, you think that that's okay if you just plant vegetation?
Well, you
right?
said they were gonna bring that up a little bit last time when we were walking.
So
through,
yeah,
right? 'Cause
that,
it's a little
that
too
grading
steep.
is not completed. It will still be steep. It might even be a little steeper
Oh, really?
when they finish. And hopefully, I think there's a boulder that's kind of slightly obscured right now that will hopefully be a little bit more exposed when we finish grading that. But yeah, it'll be revegetated, and yeah, I would not recommend walking down that slope. Just wouldn't.
No.
I would stay on trail.
All right. Well, good. All right. So we'll move along here.
Yeah, so starting at this tablet will be stabilized aggregate all the way down to the parking lot on the north side of the parking
All
lot.
right. So starting there, Mark, where you're shooting now is going to be the stabilized aggregate, and then all the way down to here. So this trail was here, but you were I think it was over here. You said there was going to be a trail according to the plan, but this is where everybody decided.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. So the original design was trying to make, I should rephrase that, was creating an accessible, handicap-compliant access from both the north and south side of the parking lot, which would require a sidewalk to come through this little boulder area and then curve back.
Kind of like where that stake is.
So right where those stakes with the yellow ribbon are
Yeah.
will be the center line of where that sidewalk would go. And so those boulders would have to be shaved down.
Yeah.
And then you put your stone base underneath your concrete. So you've got basically 12 inches of space that you need to create a sidewalk.
Right.
And when we reviewed that, we're like, no, this is not going to be good. It's just too much of an impact. So we deleted it, and which is why this sidewalk here, which was concrete, is no longer concrete. It's no longer going to be an accessible path from this end. It will be from the other end.
Okay.
We made it stabilized aggregate. Again, trying to have those visual cues for our visitors,
Sure.
especially those with mobility challenges, that the concrete is going to be accessible in most cases.
Good.
And the stabilized aggregate won't be handicap accessible, at least code required handicap accessible.
All right.
So again, a little bit lighter touch, more native, natural material on the landscape, less concrete than what we had originally planned to have on this landscape. So I think that's a good thing.
Steve, once this is all done, I mean, even the paths that don't show the vegetation, eventually vegetation will start coming up. I'm sure you have to treat it. What do you anticipate the maintenance costs to be on an annual basis up here?
That's a really good question. I don't know that we've actually put a dollar figure to it, but I think with new concrete, not asphalt, is actually going to be safer for one. So we're not going to have to do patching. You're not going to have the sloughing off of the asphalt. The maintenance on the stabilized aggregate, about every 2 years, we'll have to reapply that soil shield on top of it to restabilize it. I'm sure we might have washouts, and so we'll have to come back and reapply some aggregate. But this is where I think the volunteer program will really be extremely helpful. We're going to have trails up and down this hillside that we're going to require periodic maintenance, and the maintenance might even be just kind of trimming back the vegetation to repairing washouts and other things. It's not going to be maintenance free, and I do have limited staffing, so I think volunteer groups, which there is pent up demand, I think,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
for people wanting to
People
come
wanna
out
help.
and take care of this landscape, and by rethinking how we organize volunteers to take care of those things that we need to have taken care of, which is the park. I think it's going to be the solution to some of this. Not all of it, some of it.
Yeah. All right. What else we got here?
So
Let's move
to our left over here is going to be another gathering area with some interpretive signage in it as well. And then let's get out here to Sykes Avenue. So
real quick before you get
Yes.
into that, someone had asked this in the comments earlier, and I had asked you this last time, and I want you to give everybody an answer here. What is the projected end date for this project?
yes.
Exactly.
So we're planning on summer of '24, and being an outdoor project, it's It's going to be heavily dependent on the weather, on how fast and how quickly we get this done. And, as the contractor moves through this project, again, we're coming out here and verifying all these design decisions that were made, and we're going to change them if they're not the right decisions. And so that may have an impact on time as well. My goal is not to keep this closed. My goal is to get it open as quickly as possible, but we got to do it right. Is there one shot? Is there one shot to get it right? But right now, projected summer of '24.
When you say that it depends on the weather, for those of you who don't know, it's not because it's too cold and the guys don't want to work, or it's raining and the guys don't want to work. It's not that. It's to do certain things, it has to be a certain temperature, like putting down
Moisture,
certain materials and everything. So if you've got a week of rain and it's 30 degrees, you're not paving anything, you're not putting down any concrete, you're not putting anything down.
Nope.
So then you lose a week there. So then that's why it's hard to give an end date, right? There's just too many variables.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, because it's such a precious site, that this work on Little Round Top is handwork.
Yeah.
It's small little pieces of equipment that are being used, not large pieces of equipment, because
Can't get it there.
You got boulders that are in the way, plus you need to protect those. Every rock that's in this landscape has a story. So we want to protect all those. So it's just going to be slow work, and it needs to be slow work. It needs to be done carefully.
What's interesting to me is this trailhead here with the cobblestone looking stuff. That must have been underneath, right? Because it was asphalt from what I remember.
I think it was underneath.
So that's like an original path probably?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know where that stuff came from.
I mean, it looks old, right? What do you think, Dave?
I would think maybe the 20s or 30s.
Yeah.
30s probably, when the CCC was in here.
Or at least
that
100
group.
years old.
So we didn't ask this the other day. I know you're responsible to people at regional and then Washington. What kind of oversight are they providing for this, if any? Are they coming out here in droves?
Yeah.
And are they?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
So we have a service center. They call it the Denver Service Center because they're physically located in Denver.
Makes sense.
And they are the National Park Service's major construction project management office. So we have a project manager, we have contract specialists and contracting officers that work from that office. They come out here regularly to oversee the contract. We also have the design team coming out here regularly to...
All from Denver.
They're in Denver as
Wow.
well. And so there's expertise, project management expertise, there's design expertise, and then you have park expertise. Because the park staff knows the resource, they know the visitor, they know what's important. And so it's a collaborative effort to manage a project of this scope.
Good.
All right,
Thank
now
you.
what did you want to tell us?
I don't remember now, Matt.
Sorry.
So we stumped you both.
No, I do remember. So one of the design changes we made here was, again, back to changing the grade of this space. And the space that we're standing in right now was scheduled to be elevated about 4 to 5 feet. And we didn't know that, didn't recognize that through the design process. But when the contractor laid this out, again, we're like, not sure that's going to work.
Changes everything.
Now, the designer did exactly what we asked them to do. We said, hey, we want accessibility, so you take a hillside, to make it accessible, you got to flatten it out, so you got to raise the elevations, or create zigzag paths, which are not so steep. But when we looked at this, we didn't think this would be appropriate for this landscape. Because one, if you're on Crawford Avenue and you've got an elevation rise about 6 feet here, next thing you know, our fear would be now you can see buses from Crawford Avenue traveling over to Little Round Top. I don't think that would be very good. Yeah. So this is another space where we came back and said, can we sustain and retain the original elevation of this parking lot, which is what we're going to end up doing.
Good.
Which will also allow us to retain that retaining wall, which is framed in this parking space. There will be an extension on the south side. The south side will have an extension of the retaining wall to frame a sidewalk. There will be a little bit of fill there, 2 to 3 feet of fill to create an accessible sidewalk to Hazlitt's. We'll fill in, for those of you that remember, there was a sidewalk that came down the middle of the slope there into the middle of this retaining wall. That sidewalk is going to be removed and revegetated, and the wall gap closed up. So the access to Little Round Top will either be from the north end or the south end being the accessible path.
So no center.
No center.
Okay.
Yeah. Now from here, as we look north along Sykes Avenue, if you can visualize this with me, on the left-hand side will be an exposed aggregate concrete sidewalk, which will go down to another gathering area, and on the east side of that gathering area will be 3 more bus parking spots.
Do we have
Basically
time
where
to stroll down there?
We've got time to stroll down there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're going to go down there.
Before we stroll down there, though, behind this little skid steer,
Over here.
I'd like Mark to get a shot of the east hillside of Little Round Top, where this retaining wall is going to go. It may look very different than what you remember it, because a lot of trees have been removed from this hillside so that we can put that retaining wall in, and again, build that up to put that sidewalk, guardrail, bus parking.
Yeah.
Steve,
Much different.
at the risk of asking a question that maybe you don't know the answer to, or maybe you do, these are old trees.
Some of them are.
Is there any chance that any of them were witness trees?
Yes. There's a chance that some of them were witness trees.
But we
And-
don't know.
There's some of them, yeah, that we actually confirmed. And, originally we were doing borings. Well, actually, no. Originally we were taking measurements and using a formula to determine if they were battle related or not, or witness trees or not. And then we would core some of them to verify. But I think to do this project, some trees had to go.
Right.
Some of them being potentially witness trees. And we worked with some folks that have a special interest in witness trees here at Gettysburg.
Sure.
And we tried to collaborate with them. And from the original design, we actually reduced a lot of the tree removal from the original design.
Oh, okay.
And saved a lot of trees because we agreed. We didn't need to do this.
Right.
This didn't make sense. And that potentially could be a witness tree. So I think we have done a good job of trying, again, strike that balance of preserving what we need to preserve. So let me give you an example. This tree right here with the gray dot on
Right.
it. Well, that gray dot used to be a blue dot. And that blue dot indicated removal.
Okay.
Because the original sidewalk was coming down through here and the grading was going to change. But then we decided that didn't need to be removed. That
Okay,
there's
so-
ways that we can work around that potentially could be a witness tree based on its size, its species. And so, I think these 4 here were originally scheduled for removal. We're keeping them.
So what does the red on that one mean? Is that
Where's the red?
Right, or is it, what is that? Green? What is that color? Straight on this one here.
This one
Or
here?
is that just discoloration?
Looks like I might have gotten hit.
Oh yeah. No, that's just a scrape.
That's a scrape, yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah, I don't know what that scrape's from. But yeah, so these were originally scheduled for removal. But we're keeping them. They're nice trees.
I think it's
Yeah.
nice that you're making this area accessible
I
where
do too.
the reserves went in, because people don't typically go down here.
No, I agree, because it doesn't look like you could or should. There's
Right,
nothing that
right.
says stop and get out.
And there
so
are
it's-
monuments down there.
There's going to be
Yeah.
bus parking over here on the east side, basically where these wood chip piles are at. And then
Okay.
over here on the west side, behind you and I'm at, is going to be a gathering space. And that gathering space will connect to the sidewalk up the hill. This sidewalk is not accessible on the north side. It will be concrete, but it won't be accessible going up. And then we'll have stabilized aggregate trails, which takes you down by those monuments.
So the idea is you and your group get off the bus over here, walk across the street, and assemble with your guide or whatever, and then once everybody's together, okay, let's go, head
Yep.
on up. Yeah, it's much better than doing it in the middle of the road. So,
That's,
Yeah.
And you said, Steve, down here the buses will not pull in on an angle, right?
No, they'll be
They-
parallel to
okay.
the roadway.
it's
And it
room
would
for what,
accommodate how
3?
many? Several?
3
3.
buses.
Very nice. Very
And then
nice.
a little further down, the only additional work further down is a new gate at the intersection with the Wheatfield Road. And then there's also going to be another trail that comes off of Sykes and loops into the woodlot, if you will, and will basically, well, I don't even know what the term is, it'll daylight, if you will, out onto Wheatfield Road, close to where that gravel parking
And
spot
Steve,
is.
we had the question earlier from a listener, a viewer, about the Company B path. Likewise, the path that kind of goes behind Little Round Top, the path of Vincent's Brigade that so many people travel, that is not part of the project. Is that correct?
Not part of this project.
Let's see. So I'll go into some of the comments here. Jason Trinetti says, so grateful for the Park Service. So there we go. Mike Soller says, Gettysburg is a must-see. Spent the whole day there about 12 years ago. So much history. Gettysburg Images says, love this behind the scenes of the project. Thanks to everyone. Brian Sullivan says, how much does that coordinator position pay?
The volunteer coordinator?
Yeah.
That's a good question. You'll have to look for it on USA Jobs when it gets announced.
There you go. Mike Brisky says, Matt, there was a wooden sign with black and white, white with black writing before that sign. Maybe that's the one you're thinking of. I don't know what he's talking about. Oh, he's talking about the picture on the Warren Rock. Okay. Andy Hunt thinks it's a fantastic view. Using goats to keep the vegetation down, I think, would be cost effective. Okay. That could be.
Maybe.
Let's see. Okay, that was just a conversation between them. How will parking change? Well, we just kind of went through all that. Summer 2024 projected reopening. Yeah, okay, there you go. Is only Little Round Top closed? Is Devil's Den, Wheatfield, etc. also part of the work? No, just Little Round Top is closed. But I have a question about Devil's Den. Sorry. There's still fencing up there.
Yes.
What is that for? Because somebody asked me the other day and I didn't know the answer.
Yeah, so there's a revegetation effort happening up at Devil's Den.
Okay.
So there were a lot of social trails that went through there. The revegetation just hasn't taken yet. So we're going to keep that fence up as long as it takes to get that vegetation established. And once it's established, then we'll take that chain link fence down.
Got it. All right.
I will say other areas of construction. I think it's important to note what's happening. Part of this project, I think I mentioned the repaving of the roads. So we're still waiting on a schedule from the contractor, but that's going to have some intermittent closures, if you will, of certain roadways. So even West Confederate and Hancock Avenue are getting repaved.
Wow.
So in Wheatfield.
That's short term though.
Yeah.
So hopefully short term, but just a heads up, it's going to happen. It's going to be happening sometime this calendar year. Again, we're waiting on the schedule. We'll try to give as much advance notice as possible of when those are going to happen. We're going to try and mitigate the impacts to our visitors as much as possible. But again, it's going to be an interruption.
Nighttime, perhaps?
So that was not what they priced when they bid the project.
Okay.
They did not price out nighttime. So if there's areas that we can't do anything but nighttime work, then we'll have to have that conversation with the contractor and see how much they want to get that done.
Their headquarters is right by my studio. I can lean on them if you want. I think it'll be easier nighttime, right? Because then there's no traffic coming through.
Yes or no? Yes and no. I would say that, well, one, it's going to be more costly. You got lights, you got all that other stuff that has to be happening out there. And then, I think night work, your quality control probably won't be as good. I think, in my opinion, at least. You're probably going to get they are bright. And some of it are going by residential areas too. So I'll be thoughtful of our community. I think a daytime product would be better, but there'll be more conflicts.
Obviously you would do it during the week. So weekends you wouldn't have closures on West Confederate or anything theoretically.
We would have to have that conversation with the contractor to see how they can close up their workspace to make it safe for visitors.
Yeah.
Again, those conversations haven't happened yet. I'm not a paving contractor, so I don't know the details of what they need to do logistically to get it done. But as soon as we have that worked out with them, we'll let the public know what's happening. Even Eternal Peace Light Memorial, that parking lot and that road all the way up there is getting repaved. Doubleday, Reynolds, all that stuff.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
A lot of
it's
work.
Not that the roads are in bad shape, though, but it's good to get ahead of them.
Some of it's just an overlay.
Yeah.
I don't know that we have a lot of rebuild, but there's definitely a lot of overlay going in, which is quicker work.
Like that, what do they call that? That oil, what is it called? If they drop down
Chip seal?
those...
They're not doing a chip seal.
Chip seal,
what you're
yeah.
saying, yeah.
Okay. Anything you want to add, Dave, before we close?
No, I just am appreciative to be out here.
Well, we
and to
appreciate
see
you.
what's going on, yeah.
Dave sponsored this video, ladies and gentlemen, so let's give him a round of applause. We were able to hire community media because of Dave's help, so thank you very much for that, Dave.
You're welcome.
And Steve, thank you very much for inviting us
My
out
pleasure.
here. Ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you.
I mean, this is pretty cool that we're out here when, frankly, when you're not. So, not to rub it in your face, I'm just saying, I'm glad that we were able to do this, and it was because Steve invited us out to do it, and I hope you appreciate it. I hope you enjoy it. Believe me, by the time this place is open, the time will have flown by so much that you won't even remember what it looked like beforehand, and you're going to love what it looks like now. It's going to be a lot more practical, a lot more usable, and I think it's going to be prettier, to be honest with you. So I hope you agree with me when you come on out, and even if you don't, who cares? That's the way it's going to be. So that's all for us now. Thank you for contributing. Thank you to our patrons for submitting their questions, and if you want to see more stuff like this, become a patron yourself so I don't have to keep hitting up Dave. Thank you guys.
All
Have a
right.
good one.
Thank
So
you.
long. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks, Mike, for